Currently, this is my main camera, right? It's a Nikon Z6, and on it right there is a 24-70 2.8 S lens. It's a nice piece of kit, I like it. It's a little on the old side, but it's good, it's sharp. But it got me thinking, you know, there's a few scenarios where maybe this, I might be a bit concerned about where to take this. So maybe I'm going on a trip to somewhere, some sort of European city somewhere where I'm gonna be staying in a cheaper hotel or something. Maybe I'm going out drinking. Maybe I don't want to be taking the whole kit, right? Out drinking. And there's also a few scenarios where, let's say my sister or my partner or someone wants to maybe get into photography, and maybe I want to lend them some equipment so they can give it a go. I'm not going to be lending this with the best will in the world. I'm sorry, I can't afford this to go to Spain. So that leads me to thinking, well, what could I do? What's a cheap thing to, if it gets damaged, I'm not going to be that mad. If it goes missing or gets stolen, the only thing I'm going to lose realistically are the pictures. So yeah, that leads me here to the kind of this piece of kit here, D300. I mean, it's a bit old now. It's getting on 15 years old. It isn't full frame, but it's crop sensor. It's got enough features. The picture quality out of it is reasonable. I'm never going to take it over the main camera in a scenario where I want to use the main camera. And the price is acceptable. Of course, there are drawbacks. There are reasons why you might not want to buy this. So we're going to cover a few things in this video. What this is like to use today. I took it up a recent hill, just had a couple of snaps. We're going to try it on a couple of older lenses. I've got a 50mm f1.8 Yongnuo lens. My partner bought me this for my birthday ones. It was reasonably cheap. Not saying you would buy cheap, not saying my wife buys me cheap presents, but it was, the thought was, no, God, I can't put this in. I can't put that in the video. Or maybe I will. So we'll try it with a 50mm. And I've also got this 35-70 2.8. It looks dreadful at 2.8, but at f4 it's kind of reasonable. And the good thing is the D300 can use the screw drive on the autofocus on this. My Z6 cannot. Ones that don't use that screw drive system right there, you can see it turning as the lens focuses. We'll talk about maybe the potential price to go in with one of these kits, and maybe going in with a modern mirrorless setup. And of course, maybe we could touch on as well why you might do this, what you could do. There's a scenario that you could play out where you buy a cheap body now with f-mount glass and get second-hand lenses and try and upgrade, bearing in mind you would have to buy AFS, non-screw drive lenses. So let's look at some stuff, then we'll come back towards the end with some thoughts and try and tie this together if we even can. Well, I'll see what I can do. Hello again, you join me today on the top of a very tall hill. My heart rate hit 180 BPM on the way up, and I have been exercising for the past year, so it's quite the hill. And because I'm absolutely knackered for walking up the hill, we're not going to walk around too much. But the purpose of coming out today is, a little while ago I picked up a D300 on eBay. It came with a few things actually. First of all, it came with this bag, shoulder bag. Famously, I hate shoulder bags, but I thought I'd give it a go. It came with a grip, an aftermarket one, not the official Nikon one. And it was quite a reasonable price as well. I put up the information, on the screen as to how much it cost. So yeah, the purposes of this video is just to go over some thoughts about, using a Nikon D300 in 2025. So my journey with cameras started with Fuji, and we can ignore the Fuji, the bridge cameras. But the actual interchangeable lens camera, the first one I got, was a Nikon D80. Now I bought a Nikon D80, but it was malfunctioning, and apparently there's a very common fault with D80s, and it's not advisable that anyone buys a Nikon D80, and maybe I'll do a video about that if I can try and fix it. And then the next camera after that was a D5600. Then I had a D750, and now I'm using the Z6. And before getting the Z6, I always thought, I had a D750, and Just sounds so good, doesn't it? The mirror box sound, brilliant. And I was thinking, it's quite a cathartic experience having a big chunky camera, with a big mirror box. So why do I mention this? Well, before moving to Z6, I always thought I'd just stick on the DSLR for as long as it was possible. Use this D750. But actually, this might be a controversial take. I really missed having snap bridge from the D600. D750, at least when I had one, I don't think it's been retrofitted, but it didn't have snap bridge. And in this day and age, it's quite nice to be able to take a picture and get it on your phone. Now, of course, this does not have snap bridge. And I went into London Camera Exchange in Chester. I took one look through the EVF and I was like, sold, give me this camera. Traded my D750 in. Well, first of all, it's a very divisive subject. Very divisive subject. Some people will say that an optical viewfinder is the experience you want and nothing else. I mean, this optical viewfinder's got a speck of dust in the top left, which is quite annoying. And it's inside the pentaprism. So maybe that's... So that's marked off for me personally. That's quite irritating. So you could go down the route that optical viewfinders are the way to go. I would argue that I enjoy the EVFs more personally. On the way up here, I've been taking some pictures. I took some pictures on the other side of that hill over there, and I'm realising now, after reviewing a few of them sat down, that in actual fact, the images are more overexposed. And I remember when I had the D80, the pictures always seemed a bit brighter than I would expect, and I always had to put the exposure compensation on to -0.7, and then the pictures came out more like I would expect. And the same is true here. Now with the Z6, I would look through the EVF, I would see what exposure looks like, and I would get the exposure right, at least close to right in the EVF. You can see a good representation of what you're taking. Not the case here. I traded in pretty much all of my... Can you stop? Eileen. I traded in pretty much all of my good f-mount glass, which I regret actually to this day. I do regret doing that, but it made it more affordable at the time. And now remembering why I traded all of my old f-mount glass in is because I bought the cheap screw mount lenses. And when I moved over to the Z system, the screw autofocus lenses do not work with the F to Z adapter. So I traded them in because I had no use for them anymore. And I guess that makes sense in retrospect. I would have benefited having them now worth having this camera, but I didn't. 6 years ago, I did not know that. But why did I bring this up? It's like, well, what are the reasons for using something like a D300 in today's day and age? And this here is an relatively affordable setup where I've got the 35-70 It's an old screw lens. Of course, on this body, it makes it more like a 50 to 105, something along in that general range. And this lens can be had from in the region of 100 to 150 quid, I think, these days. I paid slightly more for it. And the camera itself is, you can get them between 100 and 150 pounds. So what are the reasons for using a D300 in this day and age? It could be that you're thinking about getting into photography. You don't want to be spending the type of money. Merlin. You don't want to be spending the type of money to get into the mirrorless systems. They're quite expensive. And of course, a lot of the cheap lenses, your cheap lenses are second-hand ones. But the good full-frame cameras are still reasonably expensive. So like when I first got into interchangeable lenses, it was with a APS-C camera. So something like this kind of mirrors my experience really. You could get yourself a D300, which is way better than a D80. More reliable, old professional type body. So talking about having a budget type camera system, you could get into photography. As long as you don't buy the screw mount lenses, as long as you buy some AFS F-mount lenses, you could buy something like this with the aim of, if you really enjoy it, you could buy yourself a full frame camera a bit down the line, get yourself an F to Z adapter, and then adapt your lenses. And all you need to do is, well, you could keep the body if you want, or you could trade it in. I mean, again, it's a cheap camera, so you're probably not going to get much for it. So let's compare. If you were to buy a Z6 now, you can get some, I've seen some go for about 600 or so. Let's just have a look at a few options in terms of price points. I'm going to suggest that you avoid buying screw focus lenses and instead buy some AFS glass with the, well, let's get into it. So this budget here, this budget setup for a D300. Let's imagine that you're new to photography and you're considering getting into the hobby. You don't have very much money. Now, of course, but you're willing to spend about 300 quid thereabouts, or whatever it is in your local currency. Let's say you want to buy a similar setup to what I've just suggested. And looking around at some prices, so the D300 itself, you can get for about 125 quid there. You can get cheaper, there are more expensive as well. For that £125, I did manage to get a full starter setup with a camera bag, 2 batteries, and a grip, which is pretty decent. And I'm suggesting here that you could pick up something like a 24 to 120 f4, but that's an okay zoom range, and it's about £130 within the price for that lens. And I'm suggesting getting probably the Nikon 1.8G AFS lens. It'll give you about 75mm equivalent, and it will give you an idea of portrait type of photography thereabouts. Won't be as good as it would be on a full frame, but the idea here is that if you did like photography, somewhere down the line you could buy yourself an F to Z adapter, which I actually haven't included in the other setups, but that'll run you in. You could buy one secondhand for 100 or so quid thereabouts. Some of the newer ones are about 250 quid. And you could adapt these lenses to the mirrorless body. But this gives you an idea of what this kind of setup is. Now, it has its compromises. Of course, it doesn't have as many features as the newer cameras. You'll be buying a second-hand body. That has its problems. While this has worked out quite well for me, there are some problems, like something looks a bit strange with the back glass of the viewfinder on this, and there is dust inside the pentaprism. But compared to the other setups you see in a second, it's quite affordable. So that mirrors the kind of setup that I had, but with a better zoom lens. I had a Sigma, I think it was 28-200 DX lens, and I would not personally. This is my opinion. Everyone's got one, but my opinion is the DX lenses, unless you're going to commit to having a crop sensor camera the whole time, which you might want to have a smaller camera setting, but then again you might need to rethink. I mean, this is Nikon focused gear here. You might want to rethink that, because there are only a couple of APS-C Nikon cameras in the mirrorless world, so just thinking long term, you might as well buy full frame glass and think about going there in the future. So what about the next setup? So I'm suggesting for, let's say you want to buy new, let's just look at new, okay? So you could get a Z5 II, that's the current in vogue camera for getting started, like mid-range. It's arguably mid-range. The Z6 III, given its price point, is arguably above mid-range. But the Z6 II runs about 1200 quid, I've seen in a few places online. Which already you're talking 4 times the price of the entire previous setup just for the body. And let's say you want to get yourself a standard zoom lens, but this is the f4Z lens. It's apparently quite a nice lens, and that runs about 500 quid now. And then the 50mm 1.8S, let me just check this. So Cotswold cameras have got it at 350 quid, but it's usually 444 apparently. London Camera Exchange have got it as £329, but it's about £454 at Amazon. So
I'm suggesting here you could get yourself a prime lens. The 50mm 1.8 is an excellent lens. You might be more into 35s or 80s. You might want more of a portrait focal length, but I really like the 50mm 1.8. Then of course, looking at 24-70 and a 50, you don't get much range beyond that, which is a bit of a shame. But you could buy the FTC adapter and then buy an older long telephoto zoom. But this is just to get you to, this is just a standardized kit, just to look at that to start with. And that tops you at about $2,000, more if this is actually more like 450, so 2.1K. Now, the other option could be, let's say you want to buy some second-hand mirrorless stuff. And let's say you want to buy the Z6, so that's the camera I use right now. And that runs about £690–700 on the second-hand market, which that's £500 cheaper than the Z5 II, but with significantly worse autofocus. But if you're on a budget, there might be some options there. And then I'm just looking at second-hand prices here. I'm going to check, so the second-hand market has the 50mm 1.8 as about 405, 410 in a few places, but I've seen it low at about 350. And the 24-70 f4 zoom, the Z lens, is £374. So all in, you're talking about 1.4 to 1.5K. So realistically, it's £500 or £600 cheaper than buying a Z5 II, a new setup. So there's a bit of a challenge really with this. If you're going to get into photography, what is your budget? And this just gives you an idea of the kind of prices for this sort of kit these days. There are other options out there. The original Z6 is still a good camera. It just has some challenges when it comes to fast moving subjects and the autofocus system. It does struggle a bit. You have to really lean on the 3D tracking and hope that it keeps the focus. But it would still be a better experience than a D300. But a D300 is only £300 to £350 to get into the system. So all of this really depends on what your wants, needs, budget, what you actually want to get out of the system. A couple of lenses in a D300 will run you about 350 quid max. A Z5 II brand new system, you're looking at over £2,000 if you want to get more than one lens. Could just buy the 24-70 and be about 1.7K, or you could get something like a Z6 second hand, run yourself maybe about 1.4K. And again, if you just got the zoom, you could stay just around £1,000 if you didn't get the prime lens as well. You just bought just a 24-70 standard zoom. You could, so that gives you an idea of the different types of costs of things. On to the next part of the video.
If you're going to go and do that, what is it like as a camera? So on this body, you have a lot more switches. So here you can switch between your manual focus, your continuous focusing, or your, I forget what the S stands for. I'll put it up on screen, I always forget what the S stands for. But you can switch between continuous, manual, and the like S where it just stops focusing after one. So there's other options as well, like your metering is a dial on the back, and you can select between your kind of spot, your center weighted, or your matrix. Funnily enough, actually, this camera's been overexposing it, and it is in matrix
note from
mode.
Editor Chris here. I'm now remembering way back when I had the D80, I always put it in center or spot metering mode, and that for some reason got better, or at least more consistent exposure for what I was going for. I'll try that in the future. Try it yourself if you have one of these cameras. It might work for you. Always experiment with these things to get the best results.
As well, your focus points on the back here are single, like multiple, or using all the focus points is a button, and quite fun as well. You can I think this, yeah, you can eject the car door with a little button. So in terms of like being tactile, and you've got your classic type display here, or the like LCD display, there's a little light, and if you want to change between sort of single or continuous low, continuous high, there's a dial here, or mirror up mode, or is that live view? Ah, it does have live view, incredible. I'm going to go back to single. So a benefit could be that it's quite tactile. All of these options on the Z6, you press the I button and it pops up on screen with all of those options, and you can use the touchscreen or you can use the joystick button to change the settings. And you know, in car, people don't like it in cars when they move from buttons to do your air conditioning to like something on a screen. You could argue that a similar thing is happening with cameras, where you're moving from having buttons to control what's going on to having menus in menus in menus. So personally for me, the only thing that buying the D300 has done is solidified that getting the Z6 was a good idea over the D750. I'd quite like to have both. I mean, I'd like to have everything. Who doesn't? And it is fun in some respects. But you could make the argument that it'd be good to learn photography with a camera like this, because the controls to change these options are exposed to you, and it might make it realize, oh yeah, maybe I should choose a different focusing mode, or maybe I should change the metering, rather than it being buried in menu and possibly just going all in on auto. I have it in manual with auto ISO. So I've whittled on for far too long now. That's going to have to get heavily edited down. Apologies to future me. So I think the best course of action now is, this chap's been incredibly patient, which is unlike him. So I'm going to go have a little walk around, take a few more pictures, and then we can have a little review of the pictures back when I get home. And I think I'll give some closing thoughts after I've thought about this a little bit more, and once I've viewed the actual images. See you back in the home office. The home office, that sounds like a government related thing, and I can't have that. See you back at home.
Well, thanks for watching this video. I'm just going to let it play out now over a few of the images that I've taken with this camera. I've taken about 400 in total, you know, in the first few weeks of having it. Up a couple of hills, around a couple of different places, up in North Wales and so on. And, you know, I'm not disappointed with the images. I think it would be nice to have a high megapixel, obviously, but I think I've proven that in the situation where maybe I want to take a cheaper camera, you know, I'm going to risk getting robbed or something, I think you can definitely get some good results out of this kit. Which I think, you know, it's not surprising. You know, some of the pictures that people have taken over the years, you know, pictures didn't just suddenly get impressive because they released like new megapixel cameras. And, you know, in the past 5-10 years, the technology inside the cameras really, it does help you, like the modern autofocusing and all that kind of stuff, the modern image processing, and you know, it could be slightly forgiving, that'll help you crop more if cropping's your thing. But I mean, I'm gonna end the video now. My thoughts are kind of summarized up in the earlier sections. Have a look at these images, see what you think, and you know, let me know in the comments. What do you reckon? Do you think this is something you maybe have as like a secondary camera to mess about with? Or is it just better not wasting the cash and putting all the money directly into more mirrorless lenses and just leaving these in the garbage heap and to rot in MBP and other eBay warehouses? Well, thanks again for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe. If you want to see other stuff as well, drop me a comment. I mean, really am interested to kind of hear what people want to see from this kind of channel. And I'm now going to go and take this doggo here for a walk because he's been sat watching me edit this video for too many hours. Thanks again. Speak soon? See you soon. God, I'm terrible at signing off.
Thanks for watching.